Bert Patenaude. The story begins in 1930, Uruguay. American forward Bert Patenaude scored the first ever World Cup hat trick against Paraguay. At the time, nobody even realized it was historic. Record keeping was so poor that FIFA officially recognized his feat decades later. Patenaude's hat trick put the United States into the semifinals. Yes, you heard that right. The US once reached the semifinals of a World Cup. Patenaude wasn't a superstar in the traditional sense. Born to French-Canadian parents in Massachusetts, he played in the rough early days of American soccer when the game was still finding its place in the country. He was known for his physical style, sharp instincts, and no-nonsense finishing, the kind of striker who didn't waste chances. That day in Montevideo, he became a pioneer, even if the world didn't yet understand the magnitude of what he'd done. For years, his achievement was buried under confusion. FIFA's early records mistakenly credited one of his goals to another player, and it wasn't until 2006, 76 years later, that Patenaude was finally recognized as the first man ever to score a World Cup hat trick. By then, he was long gone, but his legacy lived on as a reminder that football's greatest stories aren't always written by the famous. Sometimes they're hidden in dusty archives, waiting to be rediscovered. Old masters of the 1930s and 40s. Then came Guillermo Stabile. He didn't just score a hat trick on his debut, he finished as the tournament's top scorer. His goals were clinical, his movement graceful, and his confidence unmatched. He had stepped into the tournament only because Argentina's first choice striker was injured. By the end of it, Stabile had scored 8 goals in just 4 matches, setting a record that would stand for over 2 decades. His instant rise from obscurity to national hero defined the unpredictable magic of early football. Leonidas da Silva, also known as the Black Diamond, dazzled the world with skill and flair that Brazil would later become famous for. He played barefoot in training, claiming it gave him better control, and many historians credit him as the inventor of the bicycle kick. His hat trick against Poland in a rain-soaked match was pure chaos and genius. Dribbles, mud, and magic. He scored twice more in that same game and finished the tournament as top scorer. For Brazil, he was a symbol of what football could be. Artistry mixed with audacity. And then there was Ernst Wilimowski, a man caught between eras, nations, and wars. In that same match against Brazil, he scored 4 goals but still lost 6-5. A cruel twist that turned brilliance into heartbreak. Wilimowski's story is tragic. Born in what was then Germany, he later played for the German national team after Poland was invaded. His name was erased from Polish football history for decades because of politics. Yet his performance in that single match remains one of the greatest displays of individual talent the World Cup has ever seen. Proof that football, even in defeat, can be immortal. The greats of the 1950s. The 1950s brought a new wave of football brilliance. A golden age defined by heroes who played with grit, pride, and revolutionary tactics. Ademir was at the heart of that change. In the 1950 World Cup, hosted in Brazil, he led the charge of a team that was reshaping how the game was played. His hat trick against Sweden lit up the tournament, showing the world Brazil's blend of skill and speed. Ademir finished as the top scorer with 8 goals, but the final against Uruguay, the infamous Maracanazo, shattered a nation's heart. Even so, Ademir's goals defined the beginning of Brazil's obsession with beautiful attacking football. Then came Sandor Kocsis, a man whose headers were so powerful they said he could break fingers if a keeper dared to block them. Kocsis was part of Hungary's mighty Magyars, the most feared team of the decade. They crushed England 6-3 at Wembley and humiliated South Korea and West Germany in the World Cup group stage. Kocsis didn't just score a hat trick once, he did it twice in that same tournament, a record that still stands. His timing, aerial strength, and finishing made him unstoppable. Yet fate turned cruel again. Despite Hungary's dominance, they lost the final to West Germany in what became known as the Miracle of Bern. Fontaine's record and Pelé's arrival. The 1958 World Cup in Sweden gave birth to legends. Just Fontaine, a Moroccan-born striker playing for France, entered the tournament wearing borrowed boots and left it as a record breaker. With calm precision and relentless instinct, he scored 13 goals in just 6 games, including a hat trick against Paraguay. He didn't rely on flair or strength. only on his uncanny sense of timing. Yet his brilliance was fleeting. Within a year, injury ended his career. Still, his record endures untouched. A reminder that greatness doesn't need longevity, only fire. And as Fontaine burned bright, a 17-year-old Brazilian named Pelé rose from the shadows and took the world by storm. His hat trick against France in the semifinals wasn't just a display of talent, it was the birth of football's future. With his chest control, flicks, and fearless finishing, Pelé brought art to the game. When he cried after Brazil lifted their first World Cup, the world saw more than joy. It saw destiny fulfilled. In that tournament, one man set an unbreakable record, and another began a reign that would define football forever. The lone warrior, Gerd Müller. In Mexico 1970, under the blazing sun and thin air of Guadalajara, Gerd Müller became a force of nature. Stocky, silent, and devastatingly efficient, he scored back-to-back hat tricks against Bulgaria and Peru, earning the nickname Der Bomber. Müller wasn't graceful, nor did he rely on speed. He thrived on instinct. He could turn a loose ball, a half chance, even a deflection into a goal before defenders realized what happened. Every strike was pure precision, every movement purposeful. He didn't play football, he hunted it. Müller's goals carried West Germany to glory and redefined what a striker could be. By the time he retired, he had 68 goals in 62 international appearances, numbers that felt almost unreal. Yet behind the records lay a quiet, humble man who shunned fame and later battled the shadows of alcoholism and dementia. But to those who saw him play, Müller remains eternal, the silent predator who turned chaos into order, and whose name still echoes in every striker who scores by instinct, not chance. 1980s, Paolo Rossi and Gary Lineker. The 1982 World Cup was Paolo Rossi's resurrection. Only 2 years earlier, he'd been banned from football for a match-fixing scandal that nearly destroyed his career. But fate gave him one last shot, and he seized it with both feet. Against Brazil, in one of the most iconic matches ever played, Rossi scored a hat trick that silenced 90,000 fans and shattered what many called the best team never to win the World Cup. Each goal was redemption. Calm, clinical, and ruthless. That hat trick didn't just win a game, it restored a reputation and carried Italy to their third title. From disgrace to immortality, Rossi's story became one of football's greatest comebacks. 4 years later, Gary Lineker took the torch for England in Mexico 1986. His hat trick against Poland saved England from an early exit and earned him the Golden Boot. Lineker wasn't showy. No tricks, no arrogance. Just a poacher with perfect timing. He played with intelligence, finding spaces no one else saw, scoring goals that looked simple only because he made them so. While Maradona's hand of God dominated that World Cup's headlines, Lineker's calm consistency reminded the world that even in tournaments ruled by chaos and controversy, pure finishing still wins hearts and defines legends. 1990s to early 2000s. The 1990s brought a new kind of World Cup legend, one born from brilliance that flickered, not endured. Oleg Salenko, Russia 1994, scored 5 goals in a single match against Cameroon, setting a record that still stands. Yet his team was eliminated in the group stage, and his career soon faded into obscurity. It was football's cruel poetry. A man who touched the stars for one night and then vanished. Salenko's story is a reminder that not all glory lasts. Sometimes it burns bright just once, leaving behind an unforgettable scar on the game's history. Then came Miroslav Klose, Germany 2002. Quiet, disciplined, and ruthlessly efficient. On his World Cup debut, he scored a perfect hat trick, one with his right foot, one with his left, and one with his head. No celebration, no ego. Just a soldier doing his duty. Over the next 3 tournaments, Klose became the all-time leading scorer in World Cup history. His name might lack the glamour of Pelé or Maradona, but his precision and professionalism embodied the new football age. Efficient, relentless, and quietly legendary. The modern era. As football entered the modern era, hat tricks became rarer. Not because players grew weaker, but because defenses grew sharper. Gonzalo Higuain delivered one against South Korea. A quiet yet clinical performance that helped Argentina glide through the group stage. 8 years later, Harry Kane revived the art of the hat trick with a ruthless display against Panama, combining penalty precision with poacher's instinct. But even in their brilliance, these feats felt like echoes of something bigger. Reminders that the World Cup still belonged to those who could rise when the world watched. Then came Kylian Mbappé, the face of a new generation. In the World Cup final against Argentina, he scored a hat trick that defied belief. Under the heaviest pressure imaginable, he played with fire in his veins and ice in his mind. Though France lost, Mbappé stood shoulder to shoulder with Jeff Hurst, the only two men in history to score a hat trick in a World Cup final. It was more than a performance. It was a statement that even in a century defined by tactics and technology, raw genius still rules the game.